Welcome to another Unreal Foos tutorial. Today I want to talk about how to defend a rollover shot. And check out my my general defensive concepts tutorial, which I'll put a link. And in that video, I talk a lot about terminology and a lot of good concepts regarding defense. So I'll assume that you watched that, and I won't explain a lot of those things again, specifically on terminology, but I'll just use it here. Um, Okay, the one thing I do want to point out, and I'll probably reiterate this on every defensive tutorial, is that you have to know your table. On this particular table, the tornado table, the physical limitations of it, or the way it's designed, is that if I put this 2-bar all the way up against the wall, it leaves a small hole here. And this is what's known as a dead bar hole. And for a rollover, dead bar holes are actually they're not very easy to hit, so most of the time it's good to force somebody to hit a dead bar hole if possible. But just know that on this table, if you were to do a reverse defense like this and somebody goes here, most of the time if you timed it right, you're gonna block that shot. And if they do go around you and score, then that you just kind of tip your hat to them and just say good shot. Other tables like the Bonzini table, when you go and you do this post defense, this guy is actually leaves a much bigger hole, which is a lot easier to hit. So on a Bonzini table, you wouldn't necessarily use the post defense so much to try to cover anything on the pull side, because if you do that and you leave a huge hole like that, it's very easy for somebody just to hit that side. So it's very important that you know your table. Also, this goalie, man, if you look at how far this guy goes, he is covering a very, very long, dead bar hole. But for the most part, you should never have to go out here, because, you always want to block. You don't want to go past what the width of the ball where somebody could score, just because, obviously, if you're able to block it with the edge of the guy, that's enough to block the shot. So you don't have to be all the way out here, but do know that this guy goes here. On the warrior table, for example, this guy actually goes all the way out here. It goes farther out. So just kind of keep that in mind, that tables are different. They're designed and constructed differently. So know your table. Okay, for a beginner, I always tell beginners that that don't know how to block a rollover shot. I tell them to stay within this half circle here of the goal. I tell them just keep your guys in between there. Spread them about a ball's width apart, and just move your guys like this. Don't go farther than that, and don't go more this way. This is for beginners that don't really understand or are not fast enough to deal with other with really good shots, or to try or to have a different defensive strategy. So if you're a beginner, remember to keep this guys about a ball's width apart, and just try to move your guys here and here, and just sort of be try to have either a constant pace where you're moving to this side and back, or just staying constantly moving like this, like a really sort of a medium or a slow pace shuffle here. And this, believe it or not, will actually allow you to block a lot better than what most beginners do, which is just sort of stand still and or maybe cross their guys where they're playing an eye defense. So just remember that. And so this is for the absolute beginner. Now the next thing is that every player needs to tell themselves when they're playing goalie is not every forward that you're facing here is created equal in terms of skill. Therefore, don't assume that everybody who's shooting on you has the greatest rollover or snake shot in the world, right? So there's no need for you to be overplaying holes, or assuming that they're going to be hitting dead bar shots or anything. It's okay to assume that they're not that good at whatever they're going to shoot. And then as a goalie, you always try to the process of playing goalie and playing more matches is that you learn more about your opponent and what are the tendencies and the strong shots that they have. So Uh, as a rule of thumb, I typically never like to give anybody just the simple options, which is straight. I'll start out by maybe having them hit a push side or a long pull side just to see how good it is. But you definitely want to figure out how good their snake shot is. Some people will just look at the corners and that's it. They never look at middles. They don't look at inside shots. So it's a lot easier to block a shot that just has two options versus a shot that has multiple options. And so as a goalie, you always have to try to decipher that as fast as possible. Okay, so then if I want to block a rollover shot, the first thing that I do is I play a standard defense. One is if I'm playing that, and it makes a difference whether you're playing singles or doubles, how physical you want to play. If you're playing singles, you typically don't want to do a super physical defense like a really fast shuffle, because if you get scored on, then you have to go up front and you have to play forward, and then that's going to take a lot of energy. So I always try to start with the slower defense and see if I can get away with that. And if I'm getting scored on, then right away after one or two shots, then I'll look for alternatives. But I start playing with the standard defense, and with the standard defense, I like to move my guys a little bit, like rotate them like this a little bit. One of the things, a little tip that I typically do is for me to avoid overrunning my spots is I use my index fingers here, like on my goalie. Initially when somebody's setting up, if I typically have a tendency to try to race something even on the standard like this and go too far out, I tell myself, well, I don't want to go past this spot right here, so I'll put my index finger here to block that, and then that way when I'm playing this, as soon as my fingers hits here, then I know that I'm not gonna be overrunning that spot. So and so when I do this, I'm doing the standard defense. But once you learn, and you don't need to have the finger there, then you can sort of realize how far you need to go. So you could do things like with the standard defense is initially if you want to force somebody to go to a certain side. So if I say, I'm going to force this guy to go push side, so I'm going to start, just essentially showing that push side a little more. And from here, you realize, you try to pay attention as to how long it takes them to set up, how long it takes them to shoot. But you have to process all the information. If somebody shoots, if you're showing somebody a push side and they end up shooting right at your guy, either straight or pull side, then you know that they're not really either looking at the hole or they're trying to time your movement. So if I'm here, and I move and then somebody shoots right at your guy, they were either trying to time you to move there, or they're just or they just maybe that they don't think that, maybe you got it in their head that you're trying to bait them to go to one side, and they think that you're going to be able to race them out there. Sometimes you just give a hole, you just let them shoot the specific hole, and the next time you take it away, or you do have the option to sort of try to bait somebody to go to a certain hole. So if I'm doing this, when I do a defense like this, I'm covering the long, I'm covering inside. This guy covers inside on the push side and middles like that. I'm doing this, and for the most part, I'm giving up a long push side hole, and then I need to see what they're gonna do. If they go long and they hit it, good. That tells me, okay, this guy is actually looking at the open hole. He's not just guessing. So next time, if I go and I do the same defense and I have an idea when the person's going to shoot, then I can either move there now, or I can switch, right? I can do that kind of thing, or I can, I just keep my strategy from that point on. I learned from the previous shot, but for the most part is maintain your defensive position, that you're not overrunning holes, and see if that works. So that's one strategy playing the standard defense. The other one is now, if somebody's just scoring consistently on the standard defense, then you need to look for a different option. You can start doing a little bit more. This is a switch defense, where you're going from a standard to a reverse. So you can go here, maybe do things like this, and do quick switches. Like, you show something, you take it away. You show pull side a lot, then you come back with this guy. And so since you're doing fast, then it becomes a game of, whether this person's good enough to time your switches, and whether you're gonna, if when you're switching the middles are open, or if your strategy is that when you switch you keep the guy in the middle, which means you're gonna leave another hole open. But since you're switching quickly, it makes it harder for that person to hit. And then you also change what this guy's gonna cover. So if you're doing this, if you're covering pull sides, when you switch, then you typically want to leave the pull side open, because if you're covering this, then the defender's looking at this. Maybe they're looking at, well, the pull side doesn't look open. Maybe the middle or the push side. When I come here, then this guy, instead of covering this, he's gonna cover one of the options that was open before the switch, and so you kind of have to try to play the mind game. But again, better players are better at doing this, at timing switches, timing holes, and beginners and amateurs are not. So then it's a lot easier to get away with just doing something like this, and for the most part you'll probably get a few blocks. So the other thing is, like I said, sometimes you want to play a little bit more physical. When you play a shuffle defense, you can do this. This is usually better maybe to do it on a doubles format, just because then you don't have to play forward right as soon as you score like you do in singles, or unless you take a timeout. But when you do a shuffle, the shuffle, again, you want to maintain, you want to tell yourself not to overrun certain parts. And the shuffle is not just shuffling in place. As you're shuffling, you can have little subtle shifts. So if I'm here and it looks like I'm leaving the pull side open, as you're shuffling, you're sort of moving and covering that, or splitting, or spreading your guys a little bit more, like that. So if I'm shuffling here, I open, go here, and initially, again, with any defense, like if I do this fast shuffle, I wanna give you a hole, like for example the pull side, the push side. So if I'm doing this, maybe because from that perspective, if I'm doing this, the push side is not gonna look as open. So you might, from a forward's perspective, if you're doing a nice fast shuffle like that, it's gonna be harder to recognize what's open. So if you try to go push side, you may still be able to have your guy come out here and block it. I mean, that's the nice thing about the shuffle defense, is that you're sort of covering every hole for an instant of time. So you do have a chance to block whatever shot, if it's pull or straights or pushes. What else? Okay, the other things that I usually like to do that give some people problems is to play post defenses. And again, on this table I can get away with that, but so if I'm playing, sometimes you can just play a post defense like this, where you're showing a big hole on either side. So if I'm doing a post defense on the push side of it, or on the pull side, if I'm here, I'm showing that, and as soon as I feel the shot going, I race out there and I can block it. Or I can do switches as well. But for the most part, try it out with the, you can do this and see what the defender does. If you're being greedy here, so initially you can be here to try to discourage somebody from looking at the pull side, and that alone gives you a little bit of an edge, because if you're able to convince the opponent that side's not open, then when they're gonna shoot, you can just leave it open, right? If I'm here and somebody's looking at it, and you can kind of get a feel that, they're not gonna shoot there, then you've essentially narrowed down the amount of goal that you need to cover. So If then at that point I come over here, I can leave a huge pull side because they're not going to go there. So most likely they're going to go somewhere in here, either straights or one dots or push sides on the long side. So then you can help yourself like that. Same thing if you do this reverse pose. You can do again. You can make it look like you're baiting them to go to the push side and take it away, or you take it away from the beginning and make them try to go pull side. And as soon as you feel like they're not gonna go here, then you kind of cheat and you do that. You can also do a lot of like switching. There's defenses where you can do switches. If there's a person that that they're more focused on shooting corners and they're not looking inside, switching is usually a good option because when you switch, those middles are typically open. So if somebody's not looking at the middles and you're switching, you're here, you switch, you do things like that, then you're leaving the middles open. But if they're not shooting, then most likely they're going to shoot right into one of the corners, and you're going to be able to block it. So, and again, as a defender, also know the weaknesses of each defense. Like I said, when you do a lot of switches like this, you leave middles open. So I'm typically really good about when I see somebody switching like that. I'm really good at timing that. When somebody goes switch, I go middle. And then when I see that, maybe they do switches, but they leave one side open. As soon as I feel the switch go, then I time the other side. So you have to, as a defender, you have to change it. You can, your defense can't be predictive. So remember, if one time you switch and you're leaving the middle open, maybe next time you switch, cover the middle and just sort of mix it up like that so that you confuse your opponent. Okay, that's all I'm going to talk about. I'll do a follow-up based on any feedback because it's kind of hard to try to explain everything about how to play this defense, but or how to block the rollover because there's so many strategies. But this is a good framework, or at least a good foundation. So let me know if you have any other questions, and then I'll do a follow-up tutorial on blocking the rollover. Thank you.